Okay, recording's there. All right, this is the Town of Stonington Mystic River Boathouse Park Implementation Committee special meeting. Today is Monday, February 8th, 2021. It's 6 p.m. This is a virtual meeting and it is being recorded. My name is Sandy Tishier. I'm the recording secretary, and present is Nick Keppel, our chairman, Mike O'Neill, our vice chairman, Mike Crowley, Steve Planchin, Richard Ward, Deb Downey, Sue Cullen, Tom Switz, Jim Kelly, and Chris Gasariak. Just a reminder, state your name before you speak and keep yourself on mute when you're not speaking to avoid feedback. Okay, Chairman Keppel, you can take over, please.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'll call the meeting over and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America,
and to the
republic for which it stands,
one
nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I think we have a quorum, so I don't think we have to seat any alternates. Are there any alternates present? Sandy, I don't think so. Right?
Rick Wilberg is present.
Hi, Rick. Thank you for joining us.
I'm an alternate, Nick. Jim Kelly.
Okay, Rick, are you number 5?
Yeah, I think Rick was number 5. He lit up when he spoke.
Okay.
There's still one more call-in user. I don't know if that's another member that needs to be identified. Sandy, for your minutes?
I think that might be Deb. Right, Deb?
Sandy,
No, I think she hung up.
Yeah, she hung up.
I'm on the computer now. If you can hear me, I did hang up on the phone.
Yeah, I can hear you, Debbie.
It might be Mike Crowley. Mike Crowley, can you speak a little bit, please, so we can see if your name lights up?
what would you like me to say?
Oh, he's number 3. Okay, then who's number 2?
Number 2's
Who's
gone,
on
so it's
first?
just Mike's left.
Sandy, this is Chad Frost. I'm on as well on the phone.
Okay, I think Chad is number 3.
Okay, then Mike is number 2. Okay,
Okay.
we got everybody now.
I just wanted to make sure everyone got accounted for.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Susan.
And speaking of alternates, if everyone could check in with the selectman's office about where your term of office is, because I got a letter from Stacy, which that some of us have a few of us anyway, our terms have ended. So those who want to continue need to be reappointed by the Board of Selectmen. If you could check in with Tracy, with Stacy in the Selectman's office about where your term is, that would be helpful. Next, any comment from the public? I don't think we have any members of the public. So move to the minutes. Any questions or comments about the minute from January 4? If hearing none, does anyone wish to move to accept the minutes as presented?
I'll make the motion to accept. Oh, sorry.
What's that, Mike?
Go ahead, Tommy. I said I'll make a motion to accept the minutes. This is Mike O'Neill.
And I'll second it, Mr. Chairman. It's Tom Switz.
All right, motion been made, seconded by Mr. O'Neill and Switz, respectively. Any all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 No. Hearing none, the motion's passed. We have correspondence. We have an email from John Thornell summarizing some rowing center information, Stonington Community Rowing Center. I think given the focus of tonight's meeting on the brownfields application, I would suggest that we defer any discussion about what the rowing center is up to until either after we're done with the brownfields discussion or to the March meeting. But I'm happy to listen to other theories on how we should handle Mr. Thornell's email. But did everyone get John's email? I hope. All right, I'm not hearing any mutinous remarks about my suggestion to move on to the brownfields. We'll move to old business and discussion of the brownfield grant application update. I'll just open the discussion. I'm going to have Deb and Susan lead the discussion, but I think for everyone has had a chance to review the application. I think the committee is just looking, I expect, for some input or guidance about why the number is what it is and how that number compares to the earlier proposed budget that Chad had developed. So,
Okay, Nick, so let me give first a little context. Since we met, a lot has happened. And in fact, when I sat down, I needed to sort of I literally wrote it out for myself of how many things have happened since the last meeting to this meeting. So I just want to give everyone a little bit of an update of kind of where we're at. And I want to reassure everyone too, that since we've last met, we're not by changing our budget and changing our grant request, we're not changing the overall master plan for the park. That's not our intention. We want to make it easier for them to fund us. We want to make ourselves, as eligible as possible and to be moving things for the grant in the right direction. And so I don't want anyone to be fearful of the number because that number is based on how much grant money was actually, allowed in the notice of funding of application. They literally only approved the $9.5 million for all of Connecticut, all 169 municipalities. And they're already telling us that $1 million of that is going to go to assessment only grants. So there's only going to be $8.5 million available for 169 towns to compete for. So don't take the fact that the budget went down as an indication that we're not planning to still do the park or do the master plan as we'd like to. That's absolutely not the case. We're still planning to move forward with the master plan as it is. The first selectman and I talked with Todd and Marina at SHPO, got a lot of good background information, got ourselves a little more up to date about the MOU and what that entailed and sort of where we needed to start to go forward. Since I began last May, it was sort of difficult for me to walk in. We're like 3/4 of the way through this process, and the MOU has a lot of good information, but you don't know the background of how we got there. And so we actually sat down and talked with Todd and with Marina on the phone, and it was a very interesting conversation. Todd made it very clear to us that the MOU wasn't negotiable and that unless we wanted to go back through the full MOU process, that no piece of it could really be adjusted. It was not flexible. So that was good to know that we, didn't have a choice on any of those matters going forward unless we wanted to revisit the entire thing, which would be a huge undertaking in terms of time that we don't have. Todd also made it very clear that because of taking the shed down, that SHPO considers that an adverse impact. and that there would be, other than this brownfield grant, no federal or state money that we would be eligible for, which was a little surprising to me, that they would take that hard of a line on that. I really thought there were some other pots of money that we would be eligible for, and that things like the 1-for-1 historic preservation matching grant would be available to us to help us with the Lovelace House. So we were very surprised and maybe a little disappointed too, that that isn't going to be available to us. And Todd made that very clear from both the tone of his voice and the words that he used, that this is probably the only eligibility we're going to have in terms of federal or state money. So that was a little surprising. So I'm just sharing that with you for context, because we really did need information from SHPO about the Memorandum of Understanding and sort of where we stood with that. So then when the NOFA came out with the Notice of Funding Availability for the Brownfield grants, and we found out how much money was available, we want to strategically place ourselves to be as, I don't want to say as eligible as possible, but you know, we want to get everything we can for the town to move this project forward. And so we want to fulfill the promise that we made to our taxpayers with this money, with the bond money that we have, that we can clean and establish the park. We may not be able to do this as quickly as we had hoped. With the original budget of $2.4 million, we would absolutely be able to establish the park a lot faster with that amount of money, but we can't even ask for that amount of money. That's actually over the maximum. And because of the way the rating and ranking that they released with the Notice of Funding Availability, there are lots of pieces that we're not actually going to rank very high about. There are things that we can't change about the project. So we're not considered a distressed municipality, so we can't get points for that. We're not considered a public investment community. We're not considered a targeted investment community. We don't have opportunity zones. So these are all things that are already defined that we can't actually change as of this moment. So those are, you know, maybe if there's another round for opportunity zones in the future, we could apply for those. But the other things, not so much. So there, in some ways, we're not going to be very competitive. So we want to make sure that in the areas where we are competitive, like supporting DECD initiatives about reuse of historic properties, and you know, the fact that we're you know, reusing the brownfield to fulfill, you know, maybe some supportive tourism, that the things that we have, the fact that we have a partnership, you know, those things make us more, not only, I won't say more eligible, but more competitive. You know, we're not adding additional tax contributions to our municipal grand list. We're not creating jobs in a big way. We're not going to be a huge job creator. So some of the things that in the rating and ranking, we're not going to actually score very high. So that said, we were trying to take this budget and make the first step in the right direction to fulfilling the promise that we'd made to our taxpayers about cleaning this property and opening it as a park. So I want to make it clear that the town is committed to the Boathouse Park Master Plan, and that we're still going to continue to pursue other avenues of funding to take the park in a positive direction towards completion, and that this budget is not the overall budget for the park. It's the overall budget for, you know, this phase, this piece. So I just want to make that really clear. I don't want anyone to be concerned that because we've really shaved down that number, that we're not planning to complete, you know, the park's master plan. That's not what this is about. This is about making us as competitive as possible for some of the only money that we might be eligible for, so that we can at least get that first piece to move this forward. And so we could go into some of the more details, but we did actually send out an Excel spreadsheet, Nick, for you to share with people. So I also want to make it clear that, you know, this week we'll still be, you know, refining pieces to that. So if folks have, you know, different language that use, we did have to shave some of the language down too. There are now character limits in the application. So some of the paragraphs that were so carefully crafted, we had to take apart and make much smaller. And we've worked really hard to try to still reflect, what we needed to. But if there's something that someone thought was really important, we can certainly, go back and try to edit things. I certainly don't expect any of you to go, line by line tonight in the meeting, but if you could email us, in the next week or so, it would be really helpful so that we can go ahead and make sure that we've, updated and edited that application. So I don't know if people have specific questions that they wanted to, make sure that we're set in the public meeting. And if not, please feel free also to call us in the office and say, this didn't make sense to me, or what is that, or what's this about? And we'll do our best to, to answer any, detailed or specific questions. Or if you have something that you thought was really important to you that got left out of the language, please let us know. So I'll turn it back over to you, Nick.
Okay, thank you, Susan. I guess I'm still a little puzzled about in January, in early January, before the last meeting, Danielle circulated a note that 1 million was being sought. That was after the 9.5, 8.5 had been established. So from the committee's perspective, I think the number went from 1.5 million to 730,000. And I guess I get it that a judgment be made about how to make the project as competitive as possible. I guess from my perspective, the selection of a number that isn't proposed to the committee, but that is presented to the committee, in my mind, raises questions about what's the role of the committee. The committee's not the applicant, the town's the applicant. I think we all get that. But whether is it your sense that there aren't 900,000 or $1 million worth of eligible activity, or that the project will be less competitive if we ask for X amount of more dollars? And I fully recognize that nobody really knows what is the best. You're rolling the dice as to whether you go for the gusto and then be less appealing to the state because you're being a little piglet from their standpoint vis-a-vis the other towns. So I get it that it's an extraordinarily difficult task, but I don't know. And this is all new. We've never had it's not like a planning and zoning commission where the commission's role is laid out in the statutes and in the regulations, but I think, at least from my perspective, it's a little worrisome about whether we're leaving any money on the table by not asking for an extra 50, 100, 150, 200. No one thinks that we should ask, I don't believe, for 2.4 million, and the maximum is only 1 million, right? And there may not be $2 million worth of eligible activities, but and I guess aren't there like 130, 140 potential points? It's this point allocation. There's more that they purposely made there be potentially 130, 140 points as I count them. So there are aspects of the project that could make it quite competitive in my view, even though we knew from the get-go we weren't a community investment, distressed community, wasn't going to create a lot of jobs. Yes, there there are aspects that some other projects, it isn't a big private development, but there are other aspects. I also, Frank, I mentioned to Deb earlier in the week, I don't quite understand the budget, but maybe after people give general comments, we can come back to the budget, because I think the budget understates by a significant margin what amounts being leveraged. But anyway, and lastly, very specific thing, on item 7, where it says the master plan with substantial, the question was, does the project have a site plan, other planning approvals? What's the status of a master plan process with substantial public input will continue to be conducted by the town to develop the detailed reuse program. Once that program has been adopted, permanent applications will be submitted. But hasn't that happened? Are you envisioning a further master plan process?
I think what we're envisioning, Nick, is the additional site planning that's going to have to go on, the P&Z permitting, the CAM permitting. There are a lot of additional permits that go on. Maybe we haven't accurately reflected enough in that paragraph what we mean by that. So maybe that's something you could reply to me and Mark, that you think that perhaps we haven't accurately reflected where we're at in that process. And I'd be very happy to take a look at that. We've looked at this application now for so many times that I think sometimes I don't honestly see it anymore, because we've gone over and over and over every word so many times. We actually asked someone in the office to read it fresh who hadn't even seen it before, just to try to, get like a fresh set of eyes.
And Nick, this is Debbie. We're also thinking of timeline as well in terms of master plan. And I agree with Susan, perhaps it's not said as clearly as it should be in that paragraph, but it's not the intention to go back and redevelop a master plan. It's more
Not at all.
continuing to work with the timing of the work and the phases and permitting.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Hey,
Nick,
Mike Crowley.
wanted. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. What did you have a suggestion, Susan? About?
Hey, Nick.
Let's let Mr. Crowley talk, and then at the end I'll try to explain a couple more things just that you reminded me of, Nick, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Nick, my only comment is I read that grant and everything. I thought they did a hell of a job putting that whole thing together. Now, to me, to keep this thing simple, it seems to me, and it always comes down to money. Your grant money that we applied for is I think $732,000. So you got $732,000. I think there's $532,000 left in the other account. So that's what you're going to have to go with to build, if I understand it correctly. Now, if we can build a park, get the rest of the permits done, that should be, to me, should be the main objective. So we're not going to get everything we want. That's pretty obvious. But if we get enough to get this park started and get it completed as best we can with that amount of money, I think that's the way we got to go. So that's my take on it. But I think Susan and Debbie did a hell of a job in that thing. So, I'm not as knowledgeable about the writing and stuff, but it looked very concise to me. So that's my input anyway.
Well, I agree. It's been a fantastic job throughout. But I think that, Deb mentioned when I spoke with her that one of the things that isn't part of, for instance, isn't part of remediation and eligible for brownfields is the boardwalk. We approved the master plan with a boardwalk, which everyone's excited about, the community's excited about. And I just want to make sure everybody in the committee understands that, and that that's not part of the brownfields application. But as Susan has said, and what Deb said to me, wearing her select person's hat, that doesn't, the fact that the money isn't being sought for the boardwalk doesn't mean that the town is not interested in having the boardwalk be a feature, an amenity of the project. But this is the brownfields piece, and that has to be, we have to maximize our competitiveness for these funds, and this was deemed the best approach. So it's the Deb, you had mentioned it's the two big differences in Chad's budget for the project and on the master plan and the potentially to be submitted. As I recall, there was Chad thought that 2.2 was potentially eligible. I'm just pulling that number, but in that range, right? It was over $1 million that Chad thought was available. But anyway, it's the pavers. The two big ticket items are the boardwalk and the pavers.
Yes,
correct?
yes. That was about close to $1 million right there.
So
Now we don't want them. It's just we had to look at this with relation to actually remediating the site, getting it so it can be built on and get the park and the rest of the amenities we'd like built.
Hey, Deb, this is Mike, and it might be helpful. So we took, effectively $1.5 million out of Chad's budget. So if $1 million is the boardwalk and the rigging area, where were the other areas that you took money out?
So there were some areas, and I don't have my notes right in front of me, for instance, that are also being carried in the town's budget as infrastructure. Some of the removing fences and things like that the town is actually doing the work. Also, we had some adjustments based on actual size of the site versus some of the numbers that were in the budget. So that also took some things into account. Some other things that were in the budget have already been completed, like the remedial action plan. And so there's things that went through. We didn't touch anything having to do with the living shoreline. We left in there, not only did we leave, well, here's another example. It had hazardous material abatement of the house. Well, the report we have on the hazardous material abatement from Mystic Air or from Fuss and O'Neill showed that all of the abatement was interior. And that isn't actually part of this, but we intend to move the house as planned. We actually put in a little bit of money for the foundation, left in, a small amount of abatement money, because even though the report showed there was nothing on the exterior of the house and shed that would need to be abated, we left in a little bit, for just contingency. So there were things like that that we took out because they're being covered somewhere else. We didn't actually take anything out that's part of the master plan and make a large change. There's still a parking lot in here. There's a boat ramp. The public dock is in the town budget. The infrastructure is in the town budget. So that's really what we did.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Okay. It'd be nice if we could just, have an accounting, just so we know, because we'll be asked questions. Obviously the numbers have been floating around for a while, and people are going to say, okay, how'd that happen? How did we go from one extreme to the other? And then again, kind of what's the plan to make up the shortfall? And it sounds like obviously time is one of them, and looking for other grant opportunities and looking for other, sources of money. But I think it would be super helpful if we could have that as a unified conversation, to this committee, so that when we're asked publicly, kind of what is the plan with the park once this goes forward, we can all answer that correctly. And then the other question I had, this grant is a one and done. We can't ever go back for this again, right? We only get one shot.
One and done.
Yeah. And is there any indication of what they might be doing in the future with this grant?
No.
No.
I mean, if we don't get it in terms of one and done, for instance, if we aren't selected this year, we can certainly reapply for it. But the
Okay.
money is just one and done. So
Right. You get it once and you can't ever say, I need more now.
exactly, like the assessment part of it, which we already got. I mean,
Right.
we do have that in our favor, that we got the assessment part, we successfully completed it,
Yeah.
and we got all the way up through remedial action plan. So in a sense, it's nearly a shovel-ready project. So we do have that in our favor in terms of scoring.
Okay.
So, Mike, one of the things that I think you might just hold on to in your back pocket when folks ask, why is the number changed? This is just the grant request. It's not the budget for the park itself. It's the budget for the grant. And so I think once people see a number or see that we won a number, this grant is only one piece of the entire budget for the park, just as the CIP requests, are only one piece of the town's budget. There's also the operating side, there's also money on hand, there are other bonding that goes on. So I think that's part of what we need to make sure that we, inform people of in the conversation. Just because we didn't ask for all of the money to do the rest of the park, not all of that would actually be eligible. So this is only one piece of that. So, and yeah, it's hard. I mean, and we've gone through, every single number with a fine-tooth comb of, down to the fact of, the square footage of the parcel itself, and did every single thing line up with that square footage. So, some of those numbers did change on that basis as well. We found out that the liner that was spec'd out was actually bigger than the parcel. So we redid the number, and Debbie actually helped me calculate, and we figured out, between the parking lot and the other parts that would be covered, what you wouldn't need for the liner, and then you take that back. So talk about fine tooth comb of, every single number that's gone on. We also recalculated some of the other things just based on newer information that we got from the state staff about what was required. Was this much of this item required? And tried to really, make sure that, every shred was taken apart as best we could, because we want to be as competitive as we possibly can. There, with this little money across the entire state of Connecticut, we're not going to get $2 million, even if we had $2 million worth of eligible stuff. I would have a really hard time believing that they would. What are they going to give, 3 grants? No, they're not. They're going to give 10 or 15, and they're going to give smaller amounts because they're going to want to spread it around to the different areas of the state. And so even though I know we would like more and we would like to get more done, we need to make sure that everything we're asking for is eligible, is competitive, and is going to get us as far as we can possibly get it, so that we can start the process of moving this park forward and giving, our taxpayers the clean park that we promised.
Susan, no one, so I think, if I may speak for the committee appreciates, the Herculean efforts that you and Deb have made. But, we were given a budget of potentially 2.2 million. Put yourself in the position of the committee. We were given a budget that said, here's a $2.4 million project, and about 2.2, over 2 million of it is eligible. And now we have a proposal, with the goal of being competitive, of 730,000. If you mentioned a spreadsheet, I don't know if you received a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, but does the Excel spreadsheet have the line by line of the budget that we were exposed to versus your budget?
Nick, what I had emailed to you was the spreadsheet of exactly what we were asking for, and it has notes to the side of it of the cost the unit pricing, the quantities, the total cost. And then on the side, there were also some notes, like what Debbie was referring to earlier when we talked about the hazmat abatement based on interior renovations and us realizing that, there was no asbestos on the exterior. And so, those kind of notes about what really went on. And so I had already sent that to you.
Okay. Did you send it to Sandy as well to circulate?
I just sent it to you, Nick. I'll be really honest that, we're basically making all of our, our estimates and our application all in the public realm, which typically isn't done because then everyone else who might be competing against us can see everything we've done.
Right.
But I did send it to you, so.
All right. The ones from this morning, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Very good.
And again, Susan, I think mainly what we're looking for is just summarized. What specifically, what is the plan? If we're getting kind of these buckets through this grant, what buckets aren't getting filled? And then what's the plan to go after, those areas that aren't getting funded this round? And I think that's what would be super helpful because again, it's just, to Nick's point, we've been working down a path and then this was a bit of a curveball when this came in of
sure.
How do you do the same thing with a third of the money that we've been asking for? And what does that mean? Does it mean that, things are being dropped off or does it mean that things are getting pushed out or does it mean that you came up with better pricing for things that, we weren't aware of or kind of,
Absolutely.
Yeah. And again, I'm not asking you to give a line for line every dollar, I'm paying $10 for this, $3 for that. It's just kind of what is the global kind of plan for this going forward now so that we're all aware of kind of what the plan is for the project.
Maybe if Nick could distribute that, then I'm sorry, I guess I just made the assumption that Nick would forward it to the committee members and that you would already have that. So maybe that was a bad assumption on my part. But I think once you see this listing, Mike, and it is, a spreadsheet of, and it's by category: site preparation, site demolition, hardscape improvements, and the line by line of what we're going to be asking for, and then, all of the details about how those numbers were gotten. So I think once you see that, maybe it'll be clear of what we're actually asking for. So maybe Nick can distribute that, and then, I certainly be very happy, if folks have specific questions, line by line, or if, or if there's something that doesn't make sense, if you want to email me and say, this looks crazy, or, your multiplication is off or whatever, please let us know. We'll be happy to, update. But we're just trying to obviously complete the process.
Yeah, and there were, pretty subtle changes that impacted some prices. For example, the parking lot does not have to be an engineered control based on the type of contamination is there. It can just be covered by an environmental land use restriction. And that takes out the potential for having a lot of financial assurance and additional costs associated with that. So we're building a parking lot with fill underneath it, and that will cover the contamination. We don't need a line or an additional fill in that area because we've got a parking lot. And honestly, the contaminants that are there are similar to what you find in asphalt. So that's just one example of some of the things we looked at.
Susan, you perchance, are you able to display, have you mastered WebEx use of exhibits such that you could display the Excel chart perchance? There's a way of displaying, putting up.
No, I know what you mean, Nick. I just don't know if I can actually get to it from where I'm at, but let me see if I can.
I sent it to you, Sandy, in case. Do you know how to do that, Sandy?
Hey, Nick.
Yes.
I'm not sure that'd be super useful because seeing it for the first time as a group, it's going to be
that's
hard
fine.
to decipher. You know, I think if we can, you know, get it distributed around so we can look at it. And again, you know, if it's something we don't want to disclose in public space, you know, it can be a summarized version of just kind of where, you know, what the plan is going forward. I don't know that we need to drill down line for line on this thing. I think we just, you know, collectively as a committee need to be able to understand what the approach is so that it can be accurately depicted.
Well, and the other thing procedurally is the town looking for the committee to endorse the submission? I think once upon a time, I think had earlier expressed, if I'm not mistaken, anyway, do you want the committee to take an action on the application?
Nick, I think mainly we were looking for feedback. You know, if you have edits, I mean, certainly all of you have been on the committee longer than I've been with the town since last May. So there are details that all of you know. We want to make sure that we've been very comprehensive in this application and that we haven't missed something that might be important. So I really appreciate all of you, you know, taking the time to review it. And if you have comments that you know, something that you think we've left out or that you think isn't reflected accurately, please email me and let me know because we want to make sure that this is the very best it can be.
Okay.
I had a couple comments on that. One is obviously they've intentionally made this so you can't add a lot of fluff. They want very direct answers to questions. Is there any ability? I mean, part of what sells this is where it is, the site, the opportunity here. It's hard to reflect that in a few words. And is there a way to, you know, have an addendum, have any other, you know, attached information to this that would allow us to at least depict what it is we're trying to do? You know, attachments, anything like that along the way. Because it is, I mean, it reads like what it is. They ask you a direct question, you give them a very direct answer, and they don't give you a lot of time to expand on that answer in the process.
No, Mike, they don't. And in certain sections, it seems clear to me that they are expecting to be attachments or additional information. And in others, they've made it very clear that, you know, you have the number of characters you have. And very much to the point of what you're saying, in some sections, it made it very difficult for us to actually get the information down to be, you know, that small to fit into the space. And it wasn't an overall character limit either, because there are certain things that, you know, maybe aren't applicable to our project that we could have used those characters in other places, but that's not the way the form was set up, unfortunately. It was, like you said, they ask a direct question, you have to give a direct answer. And for the most part, you only have that number of characters. In a few spaces there, it does seem to be that you could attach something. And so we tried to, you know, realize that in some spots we can expand. But for the most part, we've been cutting and cutting and cutting, which is disappointing because there was a lot of really good information that I thought really was important to the project and important to painting the picture of what we're trying to do overall and of all the things that have already gone on to support the project. So that was not what we hoped for.
But this is Debbie, but certainly letters of support and other things, I think we should and will attach. I mean, we'll attach as much as we can. They can always ignore it, but
Yeah.
I think it makes sense.
Oh,
to do that
absolutely.
also.
All of the letters of support will be attached. And we have, I think we're up to almost 40. It's incredible. The outpouring of support for this project across so many different community organizations, and the support was, I've never seen anything like it.
Anyone else wish to have any questions or comments? Do two things so the committee is as informed as possible. The Susan, can you just review the timing? The submission is early April.
I think it's the 7th. Is that correct, Susan? The 7th of April?
So
Okay, so the pre-application is due on February 16th. And Mrs. Shandy has already told us that our pre-application didn't have to be updated because it was the same project that we were applying for, because our pre-application had already been approved. And so then the full application has to be accepted by 3 p.m. on Wednesday, April 7th, and they'll email us back a receipt to confirm that they have it. So that's helpful to know that there is a way to actually confirm that they've gotten it, because that's always a little nerve-wracking.
and then interviews, if with the finalists or the candidates in May, sometime awards in June. Is that roughly the timetable for processing of the request?
Okay, so what they've said is that finalists should tentatively expect to participate in a video conference in the 3rd or 4th week of May, and that awards tentatively scheduled to be announced in the 1st or 2nd week of June.
Great. Do you want to take any time and discuss the budget, or just because I leave it up?
Well, without folks actually having the budget in front of them, I'm not sure that's super helpful. So maybe we could just let folks each examine the budget themselves. And then if they have, specific questions about specific items, they could always email, and we could do our best to, get right back to folks with answers. Or if there's something that, if someone finds a mistake, we'd certainly love to hear about that so that we can make sure we update it right away.
Well, everyone got the pre-application. Everyone got the application, so everybody has the budget that's in the application. I'm not talking about the spreadsheet. I'm talking about the budget that's in the application. So, am I right that everybody should have the application that was circulated? I'm talking about the financing and budget details in section 3.1.
Oh, so you mean within the application itself, not the spreadsheet that was circulated this morning?
Exactly.
Sure, I'm happy to write down anything that folks have to say about it. We certainly want to make sure we, hear people's comments, and we can also, take them later by email too if they want to look at that versus, this more detailed spreadsheet that was put together.
I guess aside from the spreadsheet, though, it differentiates between, DECT, other federal and private, and or developer. You don't have a developer, but I was puzzled that the private funding is only 194.6.
And what did you think it should be, Nick?
Well, I guess I'm just looking to clarify that if the whole boathouse, the money that's being leveraged to build the boathouse, which is, Mike, on the order of now $1.5 million or thereabouts, since the rest of the application talks about what's going to go on the site, is only 194,600 listed because of that's the 194 that's contributed just to brown remediation? Is that the notion? Because I was under the impression that one of the things that they'll be looking at is how much money you're leveraging. If the project is leveraging another $1.5 million from the private, it's not a developer, but it's still a private contribution. So I'm just puzzled what the theory is of the private contribution being only, let's round it up to 200,000 rather than $1.5 million.
I'm just looking for the section that you're talking about, Nick.
It's on page 18 of
Page
23.
18. Okay, I'm on the wrong, that's what's wrong. Sorry. Page 18.
Yeah, Nick will be $1.5 million for the boathouse, but then with a house will be probably over $2 million. Depending
Okay,
on what
so-
happens with the house.
So on page 18, you're talking about
Source of funding,
the
private.
source of funding, private. Okay. And so what you're saying is that the delta of what we took out of the remediation grant, you think will,
No, separate from that, the 2.2 that the Chad had was not the boathouse. The 2.2 was the non-boathouse town park project that the committee understood might be eligible from DCED funding. Aside from that, there's obviously the local funding of 1.171. That's because the town, Deb, refresh my recollection, the town paid someone help remember, the town paid what? I should remember.
2.2, wasn't it?
So if the town paid 2.2 for the property,
It wasn't 2.2.
No, that's total.
That was total. It was like 1.6, I think. 1.5 or 1.6. I forget the exact number. It's been a while.
They put so much in there to purchase the land, then they put additional money in for remediation. I don't remember exactly the numbers, but I thought between the two, it was 2.2 million. I'm kind of thinking the property was 1.8, but not positive.
No.
It's around that, like Mike said.
no.
I think it was about one. I think it was 1.5. We ended up going down a little bit. We negotiated down a little bit right at the end. I think it's like 1.5.
I can certainly look that up, but
Yep.
is your point, Nick, that in the notes it said that so far in the table we hadn't included the town's land purchase, that you want to make sure that we do include the land purchase and talk about where that source of funding came from?
Yeah,
Is that what you meant?
Yeah,
Sure.
because
No. It says up in the notes, there's a question that, the table doesn't include the town's land purchase right now. So you'd like to make sure that that is reflected. And I can look up the exact numbers. That's no problem.
Well, and then also, Susan, the fact that there's a lot of public money going into this as well. So we're,
Sure.
the little bit of money we're getting from the state, that between the town and public fund and private funding, we're more than, covering that cost.
Okay, so what I can do is add the bond money in and add the land purchase back into the table. I think that was one of the questions in the notes. I had actually left like a question mark about that. So that's fine. We can do that.
And I think, Susan, I see what Mike's saying too, and it might make sense. He's saying add in 2 million or up to 2 million in the private to account for the full project, including the boathouse.
yeah, because one of the questions is what money are you leveraging? What money is what is the state money going to leverage? And it's going to leverage town investment that's already been made and a commitment from the private sector. It's not a developer, but it's the private sector, and it's a serious one. So
Nick, do we have something in writing that's talking about the commitment to actually build the boathouse building, or something that I could attach to show that, to sort of show where that number came from?
well, Mike, you made a presentation in December of 19 to the community with one set of numbers with one design, and then you've since indicated that with different design and a more, as you talked about at the last Park Use Management Committee, you've come up with a design which will save money, but I guess to Susan's point, it's going to be very helpful, and it'll make the submit. If we're going to add $1 million, then the rowing center / Friends needs to make a submission to the town that this is what you're prepared to commit to the project, so that it can then reference that.
That'd be helpful.
Well, we've known, from the onset of the project, including at the town meeting, it's always been understood that a private group was going to basically, the town buys the land and tries to get money to clean it up from the state, and then this private entity will build the boathouse and dock for it. And now they're prepared apparently to take on additional responsibility, some significant responsibility with regard to Lovelace. So I think that
Nick,
will have to be memorialized.
Yeah, Nick, that's the MOU. So we need to get that MOU kind of, refined and agreed to and signed, and that should be attached. Yep. So that's it's a binding agreement.
Yeah. And I'll. There are.
And then Susan, we could attach, if they'll let us do an addendum, we could do an addendum that just was a couple pager about the boathouse project.
Yep.
Okay.
So there are a few other things, Susan. I'll be in touch with you tomorrow. About a few other things, but that was the main thing that I wanted to understand, whether, because was there something about the brownfields monies that was prompting you to limit that number, but
no, I think we just had a few questions about what it was thought to be sort of, what should we include and should we not include? Should we include the previous assessment money? Should we not include it? And so those were sort of talking points that we'd left with the question marks. So I'm happy to, to add things back in that you think are pertinent.
Yeah. And Mike, just a quick note, Mike O'Neill, if you're comfortable, I'll leave it up to the Community Rowing Center group, but to show that this isn't just pie in the sky, give some thought to whether you'd be inclined to share with this town, which can share with the state, what you've raised so far, because there obviously has been a significant effort made towards raising these monies, and you've already raised not 4,000, but 100 times that, or thereabouts. So I leave it up to you all, but I think that would enhance the competitiveness of it, the appeal of the project, to show that this isn't just theoretical, that there's actually been a 4-year effort underway, and that it has already shown support in the community.
Yep.
Mike, I hear you. Mike Crowley, did you want to say anything?
No, I think we're going in the right direction. So all these things. The other thing I was kind of thinking of, and I don't remember now, I thought the state gave us $200,000 initially for something. Not positive what it was for.
Yeah, that was the assessment grant that Jason and Rob pursued and got. And that's money. Yes,
but
that's
what was kind of Nick. What was kind of interesting though was what Mike O'Neill was saying. The state's going to give us this amount of money, but the town's already put in a lot, and but that was the agreement. The MOU was for the state and the town to clean up the site, make it a park, a nice park for everybody to use, and the other portion would be for the boathouse, which is really what we're talking about if we get done all this yakking. But we're only going to get so much money, so we're going to be able to do what we get money for. So that's got to be used wisely. I'm sure the town in-kind services, I saw a number for that one day. So all these things, if we keep working together, we'll get there. It might not be as great as we thought it was going to be, but you got to deal with what you got. So there's no sense beating a dead horse here. It'll be nice when we get done, but I don't want to forget that damn parking, because that parking scares me. But we'll discuss that. But I think we're going in the right direction, and it doesn't hurt to ask questions. And like Susan said, she came on late, so there's always background to this stuff. You know, even us, we've been here 2 or 3 years, but you don't remember everything. So
Nope.
I to keep it all positive, I think we're moving in the right direction. I'm glad to have Susan and Debbie aboard. They have knowledge. So I think it's all good. It's not perfect, but we're getting there.
No, and obviously we wouldn't be here with the most recent submission, but for Susan and Deb's efforts. So profoundly thankful for their efforts. Anyone else, wish to be heard before we move on to other items on the agenda? Chad, speaking of wouldn't be here without Chad, I think you still with us, Chad?
Yep, I'm here.
I guess you filed your final submission, right, on the aforementioned $200,000 assessment grant, which funded your firm's efforts to create the master plan. So Susan asked me to make sure that we took an opportunity to thank you and your firm for your stellar efforts to help evolve the project, and we wouldn't be in a position to make this submission to the state without your efforts. So thank you very much for all your extraordinary efforts.
Yeah, well, Nick, we'll definitely be here, to help you throughout whatever we can, during this process. Help look through the numbers with you if that helps, and hope that the town gets the next grant. We should, one of the meetings that's convenient for you guys when you have time, schedule so that we can come in and present, all of the coastal findings, the remediation findings, and provide you guys all the documentation and go through it. So maybe when you're done and get the grant submitted, that'd be a good time when you have a little bit more time in a meeting.
Okay, super. Thank you so much. So next is Park Management Subcommittee update. I don't want to extend this meeting too long. I would suggest we give an update at the regular meeting in March, the first Monday of March. The Rowing Center folks and the rec department are in discussions, and the Rowing Center folks are in talks with Susan and Deb and Danielle. So I think there is ongoing discussions about various activities that could happen and to be managed by who. Did we? We'll take up the minutes of the January meeting of the Park Subcommittee, I think, at the next meeting of the subcommittee. Mike, is there anything you wish to add under old business, under Rowing Center update?
Nothing other than we want to continue to work towards getting the MOU in place, and that's really the big next step for us. I did have conversations with Nature Center. They are very interested in the project. They definitely want to work with us, and we want to work with them. But I think that's really the next big step for us, is just get kind of a contractual agreement with the town, and it would make sense for the town because then they can show the state that there is indeed a relationship that's been agreed to between us, and spelled out in pretty simple terms. with the idea towards putting together a full contractual agreement at a later date. But for now, it'd be helpful if we could get that first step done.
Okay. Final call for anyone who wishes to be heard on any old business matters before we move on to new business? Hearing none. I don't know of any new business, and no new business was raised ahead of time. And because this is a special meeting, we can't just take things up spontaneously. So any comments from the public? We don't have any members of the public, so no one's emerged since I asked that question an hour ago. So from the public, I mean. Any closing comments from members of the committee? The only comment I have is congratulations to the Seaport for that spectacular new news of the grant, the nice large number grant that you received for. Want to take a minute to Chris to describe for those who didn't read the paper about the new project?
Sure, I'll do it quick. I actually don't know all the details because it's just sort of coming together and a bit outside the shipyard side of things, but it's a Mellon grant with in conjunction with Brown University that is a multi-million-dollar grant that will help us do an exhibit, work with some staff and have an exhibit that is looking at past issues of slavery and maritime history crossover. Details coming together, but it should be exciting, and it is great for the town. And there was a lot of competition. We found out about it like a month ago and had to keep it secret while they notified everyone and went through all the process. Big news, very exciting. So thank you, and hope you guys all see it as it comes together.
And
congratulations.
Yeah, fantastic. It's like four plus million. And one of the intriguing things I'll be looking to, a very little known fact about Stonington. Some people are aware that Stonington is called Stonington because of all the stone walls one of the reasons in Stonington. But apparently, it's not as well known that the builders of a lot of those stone walls were slaves. That was slave labor that contributed to obviously there were a lot of farmers that created them, but I was surprised to learn some years ago that slave labor was a contributing factor in the creation of those walls. So anyway, more great news for the Seaport, and who's been such a long time wonderful partner with the town of Stonington on this 20-year dream of creating a boathouse in Park. So so happy for the Seaport.
Thanks.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Hey, Nick.
Yes,
Mike Crowley. Hey,
yes.
Every meeting I think to say this. I really appreciate you taking over this chairmanship of this committee. Nobody else wanted it, and you stepped forward. So I really appreciate what you're doing personally. I know it's a pain in the neck, but I do appreciate it. So I want to say thank you.
Well, that's very nice of you, and it's a joy to be involved. And we have a wonderful group of people, and like I said before, we may seem to be giving them a little teeny bit of a hard time, but we do thank Deb and Sue as who've given this burst of energy and expertise to the project since in the last year, which we also are grateful for. So we will, like you said before, Mike, it may take some time, but we're going to get there.
Think positive. All right, I make a motion, we adjourn.
All right. Motion's been made.
Second, Jim Kelly.
Jim Kelly, second by Jim Kelly. Any discussion? I expect not. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you,
Take care,
everyone.
Mike.
Thank you.
See ya.
All right.
See you, Mike.
See ya.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Aye.
Good night. Thank you, Sandy.